Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me again in my studio. Today I'm working on a really quick and easy autumn painting that anybody can do, even if you don't have any experience with acrylic paint. I'm using grays and whites and ivory colors, and I'm just starting by making a random background. I'm gonna start by making just an oval shape, and this is going to be the center of my pumpkin. I did change to a smaller brush. For the background I used a larger flat brush, and now I'm using a smaller round brush, and these are really the only two brushes that I'm going to need for this painting. Once I've added the center oval of my pumpkin, then I'm going to add some curved shapes to the outside. So you could think of them as half of an oval, or I like to tell my students they're sort of similar to a C shape or a backward C shape on each side of the center oval. And I'm picking up some different colors with my brush at the same time. I'm not washing my brush in between. And I started with really light colors, and now I added a little bit of a darker gray to define the edges. And then I want to add some leaves. So I want to be really quick and loose with these leaves. I'm not going for realism here. I'm just going for very expressive and almost what we call an impressionist style of painting. And I started with a darker green underneath, and then I just added some lighter values to the top just by tapping my brush and moving it in different directions. I'm going to start working on my flowers now, and I'm starting with some white paint, and I'm just painting some random circles in different sizes at the top of my pumpkin. And I started with a really large one, and then I made one that was similar in size, and then added some smaller ones. And I'm just moving my brush in a spiral. After I added the white underpainting part of my roses, I am using some ivory to add some different value. What I want to do now is add some leaves in between my flowers just to begin to add a little more definition and make them look a little more like flowers and not just circles. So I'm just taking more of that green that I used before and just tapping my brush in between the roses just to create some different outlines. And now I'm going to work on individual petals. So I'm going to go back and work with the white, and I'm just going to make some really short marks around the center of my rose. And moving, as you can see, I'm again working in almost like you would say some C shapes around the center. And this is going to create the rose petals. Once I've done that, I want to start adding some highlights to my pumpkin. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I've been a teacher for over 30 years, and right now I work with senior aging adults. All of the videos that are on my YouTube channel I have done with my aging students, so they're all very simple, beginner friendly, really easy and relaxing, and anybody can do these. You don't need to have a lot of experience drawing or painting, and they're just meant to relax and have fun and not stress and worry too much about the end result, but just focus on the process. One of the fun things I like to do with my students is I love to use a palette knife. And I don't use a palette knife to add a lot of thick paint to my painting. I just pick up a little bit of paint and scrape it on the painting, and it just adds a little bit of texture and a different look to my painting. I used some white, and I'm actually using some gold paint now, which is really fun to use, especially when you're doing a neutral painting like this. I just think it really helps it to pop and just make it a lot more fun. Once I added my gold, sometimes if you're a little too heavy-handed, it might be a little too harsh or strong, so I'll come back in with some paint and just go lightly over it in certain areas. The last thing I'm going to do for my painting is I'm going to use what's called a wax pastel. Really, this is just a crayon. It's an artist crayon, and I've sharpened this to give me a nice fine point. I'm using a really dark green color that coordinates with the other colors that I've used in this painting, and I'm just going to come in and I'm going to add some final details. I am drawing some leaves that are a little more defined and a little more outlined. And I love to do this because I just think it adds a little more of an interesting effect. It adds some finer detail that you can't necessarily get with a paintbrush, but it also gives you, really a different fun look. And because I painted on watercolor paper, I have a nice little texture that's showing through. And, I just love working with mixed media. It gives you some really interesting effects, and it's just fun to try different things and just experiment and play. And so this is my finished painting. I hope that you enjoyed my process today, and I hope that you'll try this for yourself. Thank you so much for watching.